Hi guys, welcome to the On the Fly podcast. It is me, Jordan, and my lovely friend Mardy here. We have been wanting to bring this podcast to life for a little while now, and we're gonna do it. This is like the least professional way I could start this. I'm not good at writing intros, so we're just gonna get straight in. My name is Jordan. As I said, I am a bartender in Manchester, in England. I work at a bar called NQ64 currently. It's like an arcade cocktail gaming bar. I've not been working there too long, but I hope to work there for a long time. And I've been bartending for years and years now, 7 roughly, and like mainly with cocktails in the last sort of few years. I met my lovely friend here that you can see next to me, Mardy, was it last year or the year before?
It was in 2023.
Oh God, yeah, it was. It was in
I know,
2023.
right?
We both attended the European Bartender School in London, which is of course the logical one for me to attend, less so for you, but
Yeah.
it brings us together. You want to give a little on your background?
Yes, thanks, Jordan. Uh, like you said, my name is Marty, and I am a mostly retired bartender in the United States. I live in North Carolina. I was raised in North Dakota, and that's where my bartending started. Um, I have been doing cocktails for probably about the last like 5 years or so. Before that, it was mostly like dive bars and just, more, yelling at people than actually doing a quality drink. But yeah, like you said, I met met you at EBS, and it didn't make any sense for me to go there, but my job sent me over, and
Yeah.
it was an amazing experience, and I would do it again.
I suppose they had to do some good sometimes, sending you all the way over
Yeah,
to London for it. I mean,
definitely.
it was a nice journey for you. It was great because you had lots
Yeah,
of things paid for you, and I was struggling to get food. So, but it was cool, and it also kind of reignited that love for cocktails for me.
absolutely
So
did.
it
Yeah,
was yeah, it was a pretty cool experience. Since then, we've obviously kept in touch quite a lot, and we both love our
yeah.
cocktails. Now we are quite different bartenders. I think it's fair to say. Um, we've kind of gone through a lot of different paths and ended in a kind of different locations with it.
Yeah,
Where are you at
I think
now?
our right now I'm mostly retired. I'm doing some consulting and also just like doing some fill-ins places, and more just I guess I like to call it recreational bartending, where I can just make cocktails. A lot
Drinking.
of my cocktail focus, yeah, right, is culinary based. So I like to do the infusions and make the syrups and stuff like that. And so tinkering is kind of what I've relegated that to for the most part.
Yeah, yeah, that's fair. I think that like even though your career might have taken you in a slightly different angle now, I think it's cool that you're still keeping a lot of things like on the side and stuff. I don't want to spend too long in this just kind of yapping about ourselves.
Yeah,
But as this is the third podcast that we've done, I figured it was worth giving at least a little bit of an introduction about us and who we are so that any of you that are listening or watching know why you might listen or watch us. Listen to, or you know what I mean.
why you want to perceive us.
Yeah, exactly. Um, the idea behind this podcast basically is that because we both have such a love and passion for cocktails, particularly getting creative with them, as you said, you like making all your infusions and your creations and stuff. We wanted a way for us to talk about cocktails in the ways that we like, and do so in a way that um,
Lost one.
do so in a way that kind of let's just really get the creative juices flowing, you know? And why not also get attention for that um, by letting other
Definitely.
people listen to us?
Yeah.
The idea behind this podcast basically is that we're going to bring one ingredient to each episode. It's going to be different, whether it's a spirit or a juice or a liqueur or bitters or absolutely anything. The episode is going to center around one ingredient. We're going to talk about some classic cocktails that have that in. We're going to bring a recipe each for a classic that we think really exemplifies the ingredient and also makes really good use of it. And then we're going to spin a wheel for some other ingredients and get really funky and creative and try and come up with something cool together for that. As much as we are both professionals with a decent breadth of knowledge, I'd like to say, this is intended more for entertainment, I would say, than education. So
definitely,
take what we say lightly.
Fact check us.
Yeah. There's certainly we're certainly going to get a little bit weird with some of it. So professionalism will hopefully seep its way in, but it's not going to be at the forefront of what we do. So today, for the first episode of On the Fly, we have gone with White Rum. This was a suggestion by you, actually. Is there a particular reason you wanted to go with White Rum first?
I think just it's a great starting off point. I didn't do a whole lot of rum cocktails in the first half of my career, but since moving to the southeastern part of the U.S., everyone drinks rum here. And it's really versatile, I think. And, like everyone thinks daiquiris, but I don't think daiquiris because here that means I have to bring out a blender, and the blender is always broken.
Yeah, blender doesn't work, sorry.
But yeah, I thought that would just be a good starting off point. And it's like we were talking about the other day, it's rum. It's kind of just, a real basic.
Yeah.
I think it's better than vodka, but it's an open canvas.
Yeah, that's true. And it gives us a nice kind of starting point for with the creative side of things. It's very moldable, right? It's used in a lot of classics as a very kind of, as much as it has a really lovely flavor to it, it's not too complex. So it's quite easy to add flavors to and it not be something that is going to fight with each other, right? It's used so often, as you said, with your frozen daiquiris and whatever. A lot of the time, those are flavored. At least over here, I don't know if that's the same over there, but most
definitely.
of the time, it's strawberry daiquiris are rampant, especially when the sun comes out for all 2 weeks. It comes out here in the UK. A frozen strawberry daiquiri, it hits different. I can't argue with it.
Definitely.
But that works so well because of the kind of flavor that the rum has, but because it isn't an overpowering one, because you really can get that strawberry through, and it really gives you that punch without it being overbearing. If you put a whiskey at the front of that cocktail, it's a totally different kind of flavor profile, and it's a lot, right?
Well, even if you use a darker or a more funky rum as opposed to a white rum, that even they're not interchangeable necessarily in a cocktail either.
That's true. They're fun to swap around, but they have very different effects on the drink for sure. Especially if you're going with something quite pungent like a strawberry flavor or similar. Speaking of the daiquiri, obviously, I would hesitantly say that's probably the most popular, the most famous white rum classic cocktail.
Yeah, I mean, unless you get into the Tiki realm, but those are.
But I mean, if you, I think if you asked 100 bartenders and 100 drinkers, what is name me 3 rum cocktails, I think 90% of them are saying a daiquiri.
At least one of them.
Yeah, I think maybe a mojito. Mojito could be up there.
No, we don't have mint either. Sorry, Jordan.
Yeah. I think I'd rather make a blended drink than a mojito. I don't know what it is about a mojito that just angers me, but it's frustrating.
It's one of those glitter drinks that once one person orders one, it just everyone does. So you just have to commit to just muddling for just your entire shift.
Yeah, people see it and they go, oh, well, now I want one of those. I think the only other ones that come close to that, at least here, is espresso martini, porn star martini. They have a similar kind of snowball effect. But we'll get back onto those in later episodes, I'm sure, when they come up.
Yes.
For now, as much as the daiquiri and the mojito and those kind of drinks are maybe some of the most famous ones. That also means that they're kind of boring ones for us to bring recipes for. So it's worth us
Definitely.
talking about them, but they're not going to be the ones that we bring the recipes for. Rum as a spirit category. I actually, until doing a little bit of research for the show, I actually thought it was a lot more popular than it is. In terms of sales numbers for both UK and US, it's below like all of your other core spirits, like vodka, gin, whiskey, tequila. They're all much higher in sales, which I thought was really interesting, especially with the varieties of rum that there is. Like, even if you take into account all the different kinds of rum, it's still lower. And
Yeah, no, I think that like when I've put up like a bar menu and things like that and like done like liquor for a bar, there is, I have one white rum generally, maybe two. But it's not something that you have an expansive, I'll have like 5 or 6 different bourbons, right?
yeah. I
But I
suppose
mean, there's just,
I suppose if you're not a tiki bar, you're not going to stock too many of them,
yeah,
right? I just
no.
I just thought it would be at least a little bit higher. I thought it'd be higher than tequila. I know that tequila is like a popular shot, but I guess if maybe I'm thinking too narrowly about sort of the way in which like a spirit mixer, right? Like, I guess you're
fair.
seeing that a lot less. But I guess the amount of shots and margaritas that go out, maybe that's keeping them above it.
Yeah, there's been such a resurgence in tequila consumption that like, I wouldn't think that it would overtake. I would think that it would overtake rum by far.
I guess that's fair, yeah. But I think that rum as an ingredient has been used in cocktails particularly quite heavy compared to a lot of the other categories. Obviously, vodka's taken a big insurgence over the last sort of decade or so, mainly just due to it being moldable with lots of fruity flavors. But rum playing such a big part in the tiki world, I think has made it a really important ingredient. Granted, not always white rum, right? Which is, what we're talking about today, but it has played a part in plenty. Do you know what the highest selling white rum is in the UK or the US? Because it's the same in both.
I would assume it would be Bacardi.
It is comfortably Bacardi. Yeah, it's not even close actually.
Yeah.
It's Bacardi first. It's Havana Club second in both, and then after that it peters off kind of differently. Interestingly, one of the highest here is Aldi's own. I don't actually remember what it's called, but Aldi has become so popular here that their own brand of white rum is one of our best sellers.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
I haven't got the opportunity to try any of their liquors because I live in a state-run liquor, so all of our state's liquor is controlled, so we can't buy it in a different store.
Wow, the concept of that is like, we obviously come from very different
we're prohibition
worlds in terms of
still, yeah.
in terms of liquor. Yeah, like it's I guess the differences between the UK alcohol scene and the US alcohol scene are there are some of them that are obvious, but most of them aren't until we talk like this, right? Until we see a lot of those different stuff. But I do think it's interesting that it's still the same bestsellers in both.
Definitely.
That like Bacardi is timeless.
It's such a good product that
it's consistent.
Why would you? Yeah, exactly.
It's consistent.
Why would you pick something else when
like I don't know if it would necessarily be my go-to, but for like a speed rail rum, it's perfect,
definitely.
right? It's affordable, it's good, it does the job.
Yep.
I did say that even then, I wouldn't say it's my favorite. Do you have a favorite white rum or a go-to white rum? Like if you were setting up a back bar, you said you'd probably only have one white rum. Let's say for argument's sake, you've got Bacardi on there already as a speed rail, but you want a premium one on there. You've got a pretty big back bar that you're setting up. You want a slightly more interesting one or a unique one, or even if it's another boring one, even if Havana is your go-to, just ignoring Bacardi for its commonplace.
Sure.
What would be your go-to white rum from there?
That's a great question because I really can't think of another one. And you keep saying this Havana Club, and I've never seen that in a bar that I've worked at.
You've never seen Havana Club?
No, No, I'm gonna want to go to the
Oh,
state liquor store
interesting.
to see if we even carry it here because I'm wholly unfamiliar
Oh,
with that
so
brand.
from what I saw, I mean, I'll fact check myself here. But I'm pretty sure
No,
from what I
I
saw,
believe you.
the U.S. best selling white rums. I'm pretty sure Havana was second on that too. Hi, quick editor's note. We discussed this a little more after the episode, and that was where I learned about the fact that Havana Club is Cuban and therefore not allowed to be imported into America. Apparently, the Havana Club I was seeing on Google, that's the second bestseller in America, is owned by Bacardi, like it's one of their brands. And they're currently in like a big legal battle with Havana Club about all of that. This was not information that we knew going into the podcast, nor was it information we found out while recording, only afterwards. So yeah, I just wanted to put this little bit in here because we're going to continue to sound stupid about it for a little bit. But yeah, whoops.
Well, and it kind of varies on because like you were saying UK
Then
versus US liquor culture. Like US liquor culture is so vast because I mean the US is so vast.
that's true. That's
So
true.
it could be in places like New York, Vegas, Miami, those places that have bigger liquor culture than where I'm living. That could be a brand that's, but I haven't even like seen advertisements for it.
Yeah, there's wow, that's crazy. It's a bit of a household name here in terms of it's kind of seen as like maybe the next step up from Bacardi, if you will. It's used in a lot of tiki. We don't have too many tiki bars, right? But a lot of places that will have a tiki focus have a big focus on Havana Club. There's a chain of bars here called Revolution de Cuba, which have a big focus on like tiki and rum and stuff like that. And Havana are like every time you see a Revolution de Cuba, there's a big sign on the wall somewhere saying Havana. Or there's like
Interesting.
a plaster on the window for it. It's super huge. I think it's interesting that it's not something that you've encountered. Maybe it's more of like maybe a different sort of section of America is where it's more popularized.
That's my guess. I'm guessing that because it's definitely possible that there's a large pocket of those rum drinkers that are drinking other things, but
That's true.
it's
That's
not one
true.
that I'm familiar
Well,
with.
I guess that wouldn't be your go-to then, with you having no idea what it is.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
what would be? What would you go to?
Generally, like if I'm going to go with something that's again like pretty smooth and easy drinking and mid-range, um, probably some of the Cruzan or the Captain Morgan. The Captain Morgan's white rum isn't bad. Um,
Interesting.
those are
I
probably the more popular ones that I would see.
we see a lot of Captain Morgan spiced. Captain Morgan
Mm-hmm.
white rum is not a thing really here. Like it exists, but you'll see a
Mm-hmm.
lot of spiced. You'll see some dark. You will very rarely see that white. Um,
Yeah.
I also don't know if I trust their white. Captain Morgan's does not have a good reputation here.
No, I worked somewhere that they replaced Bacardi with the Captain Morgan because they got a good kickback from a
It's
distributor,
cheap. Yeah, it's
and
cheap.
it was a choice, but it wasn't bad. Like it was, and they had a nice coconut one that wasn't Malibu, but it was fine. Uh,
Yeah,
but yeah, just I
that's
think that like Bacardi has such the market share here
yeah, for sure.
that it's really hard to think of another one, and it kind of does make me laugh because remember in class when the gentleman asked me if I'd even heard of Bacardi, and he was shocked because he's like, "Well, it's from Cuba, and you guys are embargoed." Well, no, it was from Cuba, but now it's in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, I believe it's either Puerto Rico or Costa
it's
Rica. I get those two confused, but
it's
because of the
yeah,
U.S. embargo on Cuba, the Bacardi family moved
right.
it.
That makes sense. That is a knowledge that is not commonplace here. Any part of that really, because we don't have those embargoes, right? We're able to
No, that makes
we ship
sense
a
too.
lot of things
Yeah.
from international.
Mhm.
You mentioned Cruzan. That is not a brand we have here in the UK, but I have heard of it. Just
Yeah.
through bartending circles and like online and stuff like that. I would say for me, my go-to, I believe, is one that is available in America. Whether it's available where you are is different. A little bit more on the expensive side, but probably the best white rum I've had. Plantation 3-star.
Oh yeah.
I love
Yes. Okay.
Plantation.
You know what?
It
Now that you mention that Plantation is really great. They make a lot of great products.
Yeah, it's maybe a little bit much for something like a daiquiri, right? But it is really good for drinks that like have a lot of other flavors in it. It adds a lovely like a body of complexity behind it. It's I used it in a cocktail on a menu I made back at a hotel I worked in last year, and it just the difference between that and the Bacardi that I'd used before, it was exceptional, and it was a tiki drink, so it just sat really nicely. It's obviously a little bit pricey sometimes, and we had a lot of issues getting it in. I don't know whether it was just the distributor we were using or UK distributors not having much of it, but obviously you're going to have Bacardi in, right? So you're probably going to use that. But if I'm going for a bit more of a bougie one, I have to say Plantation 3-star.
That is a good one.
One of my favorites we've had. Right then, let's talk about some of the cocktails that we would like to bring. So what we're going to do now, we'll go through one each, one cocktail, one fantastic creation from history, an already existing classic. Let our creative brains rest for a moment, and let's talk about a classic with white rum, preferably, of course, with white rum as a relatively core component, right? If we're going to have an episode centered around an ingredient, there's not really much point in talking about that ingredient as an afterthought, right? So what cocktail have you brought for me today?
Well, so when I think of rum forward cocktails, I immediately think of the Hemingway Special. Other names of it would be the Hemingway Daiquiri or the El Florida No. 4. The lore with this, and of course, with any sort of cocktail history, it's all sort of like this is what they say, and is it true? Well, maybe. It was invented by a bartender at the Havana's El Florida bar. He was making daiquiris, and Hemingway walked by and was like, "Here, give me one of those." Tasted it and was like, "This is great, but there's way too much sugar in this, and I want twice as much rum." So they doubled the rum and took out the sugar. And legend has it that he drank 16 of them that night. But it's a pretty bland drink when you think of it, like a daiquiri that's just like rum. You've got, maybe just some rum and lime juice. Yeah, basically. And so people have expanded on it a little bit to make it a more palatable, a little bit more palatable drink. So the version that I'm looking at has white rum, maraschino, lime juice, a little bit of grapefruit juice, and then for the more American palate, just a tiny, tiny bit of simple syrup, just to kind of like bring it all together.
Nice.
And then shake and strain that into a coupe. Really nice drink. It's refreshing, but also they'll catch up on you because it's about 60 milliliters of rum in that little drink there.
Yeah, it is worth mentioning actually that obviously being from different parts of the world, we use different measurements for our drinks. We use milliliters over here by standard. You use ounces.
Yes.
For the sake of avoiding confusion, we're gonna use milliliters whenever we give recipes for the most part, just because it's more widely used across the world than ounces is. But we will put the recipes that we use here in the in the descriptions or in the comments or whatever for whatever platforms we put this on, and we'll put it in both just to be to give you, if you've only ever worked in ounces and you want to go away and make one of the cocktails we talk about, it's worth putting it there. The Hemingway is a name I've heard plenty. It's not something I've ever seen on a menu here. I'm sure that's just through my lack of experience attending cocktail bars, but it's not like a super common one here. It does, however, sound fantastic. I love maraschino. I think it makes everything better. I've never seen a cocktail with maraschino in it and thought, that's just not as good. It's always better. So yeah. I think it's a really cool change. I love the idea behind the story being that he went, take everything out of it, and then people have adapted it by adding loads of extra stuff into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I had because it wasn't one that I was super familiar with, but I had a friend come visit me at the bar I was working at, and he requested it, and I like it every once in a while with a dash of Angostura bitters in it as well. But like something you'll learn about me is that I think a dash of Angostura bitters goes well in most things. So
Yeah,
you can
I
take or
can,
leave
I
that.
can, I can understand it. I on the more sweet tooth side, think a dash of sugar makes everything a little better. So we're
I mean,
we're on
there's
opposite ends
that too,
of the scale.
of
Together,
course.
we'll make a decent old fashioned. But so what? Let's talk measurements. You mentioned
Yeah.
already probably about 60 ml of white rum.
Yeah, so 60 ml of the white rum, and then the maraschino, we get about 15 milliliters, give or take. 25 milliliters of lime juice. For the grapefruit juice, about 15, and maybe 10 mils of simple syrup. But if you want it on the sweet side, you can go maybe up to 20.
So
But
simple
the
syrup, you'll
theme
be
of the
going
drink
1-to-1,
was,
right?
yes, one
Be
to one
simple, yeah.
simple syrup, yes. The theme of the drink is a bit more of a bitter drink, the classic, but sweetening it up, but still keeping those grapefruit notes, the lime juice, the more on your tart on your tongue.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean,
and
I'm
then
not usually a big fan of grapefruit juice, but with it not being a core component, it sounds like it'd be quite refreshing, I have to say.
it is really refreshing. It's nice for and think about it, like in Havana, it's hot all the time,
Yeah,
and very simple, very light.
that's true.
Definitely,
That's true.
you'll
It,
have to
it
try
seems
one.
like perhaps a bartender's drink with the sort of
Yeah,
strength and a sour on it, right?
definitely.
I feel like if you're making the same drink for a bartender and for someone who's never stepped foot behind a bar in your life, you're probably airing between your sour and your sweet quite differently.
Definitely. Yeah.
But it sounds pretty good. What you going for your garnish? Is there any like
Yep.
particular classic
Always
garnish
just
for it?
like just a little lime wheel. And then I like to serve this in a coupe. I have a coupe love affair, but I suppose you could put it in, even something as dainty as like a Nick and Nora or just your traditional cocktail glass.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I
yeah,
I like a coupe.
just
I think a coupe always works, and it's nice in the mouth. You know, I obviously with a lot of these classics, this recipe that you've got here sounds fantastic. It might not be how everyone's made it. Someone might be listening going, oh,
yeah,
but I made it and I did it with this and I did it with that.
yeah,
I am a firm believer in there is no such thing as an incorrect recipe. That obviously is to be taken with a pinch of salt.
sure.
But the point is more that if you like it, it doesn't matter.
Drink it.
If you're
Yeah.
using the right
No, I
stuff,
agree
that's
with that.
fine. What's that? You think
Yeah.
that this drink should have 30 ml of grapefruit juice instead of 15? Cool. Make it with 30 ml of grapefruit juice. Like you think that this should have 50 ml of the lime juice? That's fine. You're allowed to be a psychopath. It's cool. Drink your lime juice. Like there's going to be varying recipes across all different bars. You could go to 10 different bars and order this drink and they'll all make it different. That's fine. We're giving you a recipe that we think is good, that we think works. Maybe we've got it from somewhere. Maybe we've made it. Who knows? It's going to vary on every drink. But that doesn't mean that what you want is wrong or that what we want is exactly the right way to make it. It's just a good drink.
We'll just judge you for it if it's not ours. That's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's the bartender's way. No, I like it though. I think it's something.
Tell me
I
about
might
your
have
drink,
to...
Jordan.
Yes. So I went down more the tiki route. I think rum for me.
Of course.
It always makes me think tiki straight away. And I love the loudness of it, I guess. I've gone with it was a cocktail we went over at EBS actually, and I have seen on a menu here in like a tiki pop-up that happened a few months ago at a bar I went to here in Manchester. It is the Fog Cutter, one of the more famous tiki drinks that wasn't a Don Beach creation, as much as he likes to claim it is. It is primarily white rum, but it is a blend of spirits, which I love these like classic blend spirit drinks because as soon as you start throwing loads of spirits together, it's very easy for it to not work, and it's very easy for it to just be too much. And I think tiki drinks that do that have like lasted the test of time have done so for a reason. I think they come with a really cool level of complexity. It was invented by Victor Bergeron. I'm definitely saying his name wrong, but you know, it is primarily white rum. It is brandy and it is gin. 3 wildly different spirits. You would argue.
Such a varied profile there.
Yeah. But they sit together surprisingly well, especially if you get like this is one where I'd really love to use like the plantation, right? Because I think the sort of like really warm notes of it just sit nicely with the brandy. Use a good brandy, use a good gin, you know. Probably quite a soft gin, I would say. If you go with one that's too harsh, those botanicals can get a bit too much with the other flavors. But that's just my opinion.
What would you recommend? What brand?
Oh, okay. Now you got me on
Not
the
to put
spot.
you on the spot.
I think Tanqueray is safe.
Yeah,
Tanqueray is
probably what I'd go
always
to.
high quality. I actually not to shout out my city again, but there's a gin that we make here, a gin that a distiller here makes called Manchester Gin, made by the distiller Spirit of Manchester. So it's very local. They use dandelion and burdock in their like botanicals and stuff, amongst other things, but they're like a very Manchester specific like herbs and stuff, and a big focus for them with all of their spirits is that they're sippable, that they're drinkable without mixer if you wanted to go that way, so that they're very smooth. Therefore, I think would sit really, really nicely with like a plantation with a decent brandy. I don't have great knowledge on brandy, but a Cavassier perhaps. I'd think it just really complemented well. Tanqueray would be my go-to, but here I'd probably use Manchester Gin. Lemon juice for your citrus, orange juice for the body and the flavour, and I guess also a little of the citrus. It's shake and strain, cubed ice, crushed cap, and it has a float of sherry on it just to really make it a little bit bougie. Probably garnish it with a mint sprig. Put it in like a tiki glass or a highball or just anything that you can serve relatively long. It's quite a big drink. So, but it's going to last you a little while and still be really strong. It's not a cheap drink to buy usually because of that. But I just think that despite the fact it has so many different things in it, the white rum is really what gives it its base, there's a whole world on top of it, but white rum is the atlas. It holds it together, and it gives it such a fantastic flavor profile to build from. The brandy and the gin just add to that with the warmth. It has like quite a lot of the juices in it as well, so it's not overpowering despite all of those spirits. And the sherry float just makes it a little bit bougie. It's nice on the nose. It's just I think I love a really complex drink that looks like it shouldn't work and it does. I think one of my favorite things within mixology is when you look at something and go, there's no way that's good, and then it's great. And I think the fog cutter is a lovely early example of hitting that on the nose.
Yeah, definitely. I think that sounds great. Like you said, not a super common drink. I have seen it on a couple menus over here. But yeah, a lot of those tiki drinks end up being just like, it's a hard drink to serve in a restaurant that has like, a service limit. Like here, you can't serve more than 3 ounces of liquor in one cocktail.
Yeah.
So some of those will tip up to that top. So they're not super common, but definitely.
I think the sort of classic recipe for this would go over 3 ounces. I don't know ounces very well, but the recipe that I would use for it, the sort of that's very heavily based on the original published recipe by Victor Bergeron in it was in like the old Don Beecher books hundreds of years ago. We're talking like an 18th century drink. Would be 60 ml of the white rum, 30 ml of the brandy, 15 ml of gin, which I believe is like 2 ounce, 1 ounce, half an ounce, right? Roughly, give or take. 30 ml of lemon juice, 60 ml of orange juice, and then 15 ml of the sherry for the float. Looking at those ingredients, I am somewhat inclined to agree with you that a dash or two of Angostura bitters kind of go hard.
No.
Maybe you've persuaded me even just
Yeah,
by
more things
mentioning it.
need just a little bit of bitters on them, just a little bit.
I could see it working. Maybe a bit too much. I don't know, but yeah. So that is it. Is there is a lot of spirits in it, but it still manages to not be too spirit forward because there's also a lot of juice in it. It's maybe not the most wallet friendly choice because I don't see any way you can make that cheap and make good money on it as a bar. There's a lot of alcohol.
No, definitely not. But sometimes you just got to have one of those, like, the start off the night drinks. That's your most expensive drink.
That's true.
Your palate is ready,
and you go into the daiquiris after that, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Go into Hemingway's original daiquiris.
Chugging Long Islands and yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I've seen on a couple of when I was kind of looking up some of the history and stuff on this, I saw a couple of comments on articles on it saying it's the Long Island of tiki drinks, because of the big mixture of spirits, which I think is a really funny way to put it. Maybe a slightly less annoying order at the bar, because when someone orders a Long Island, you kind of, I don't know about you personally, but someone orders Long Island from me at the bar, I look at them and go, okay, not going to be a problem. I get it.
No, I only feel that way if they order a top shelf Long Island. Right?
Do people do that? That's not.
Oh,
no
yeah.
One does that here.
That's a
no
big part of
to do that
the
here.
Culture here. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I will definitely serve you, and that's like a $20 drink, because, like, think about, like, you're using, and it's gonna taste. It's a mix of 5 liquors all together, and
yeah.
But yeah, discerning palates are able to tell that it's,
I don't think
not
they
just,
are. I think they lie.
I don't think they are either. But,
I think put that much together, you're not getting anything good out of it. But
yeah,
which does somewhat contrast what I've said so far. But
my service well is set up to make a Long Island, right? Like, all those bottles are there, but like for a top shelf, I have to go wandering up through all of them. No, it's too much.
Yeah, I would just say no. I think if someone asked me for that, I'd say get something better or get a cheap Long Island. Like, stop trying to act.
But
cool
I don't want to get a hangover.
Trying to act cool in front of, you don't want to get a hangover. Don't drink a Long Island iced tea. All right?
Yeah, exactly. No, get
a lemonade. And
that is
down.
the answer.
All right? Like, that would be my answer to that. Yeah, I think two quite different drinks we brought there, which I think is really cool.
Definitely.
I like it's the simplicity of White Rum and what it is lends it to being able to go into very, very different drinks, right?
Right. And it's one of those ones that you can kind of sub in. Like, there's been a push on, like, for like even an espresso martini using rum, like subbing White Rum for vodka and things like that. Like, it's one of those ones that's like, has a little bit of extra character to it.
I actually think a rum espresso martini is better than a vodka espresso martini. I will say that.
Yeah, I am not. I will admit I am not a espresso martini person. However, the ones that I've tasted that have had rum in them, I think that interesting character kind of plays with the coffee, the bitterness of the coffee, the sweetness of the rum.
Yeah,
they go together pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's another tiki cocktail, the coffee grog. I think we made one of them at
yes,
that down in London, right? Where it was like pour over coffee and it was rums and stuff like that. And it was so good. I think rum and coffee are really underutilized together, but I think they work so well. Like, I think a spiced rum more so, perhaps, just because of like those kind of vanilla notes and the warmth behind it. But I mean, with rum being something that comes from like sugarcane and molasses, coffee has always gone well with any kind of sugar. So there's that kind of correlation there that you could look at that and go, I can estimate that would work well. I think that's part of why it does, Well,
definitely. And geographically, like, you think that those things are kind of existing in the same area. Those crops are growing in the same area too.
That's true.
So I'm sure that there's a lot of crossover there with people drinking coffee and adding rum to it.
Yeah, I think it's something that we should try and do more. Maybe I'll try and do after this, actually, because it sounds really nice.
There you go.
All right. Two fantastic classics there. We could talk about classic rum cocktails all night, I'm sure. But let's get the creative juices flowing. If you think your brain's ready to
the main event,
ready to fire up. what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin a wheel. So the way that we're going to do this little section, if you will, is I'm going to spin a wheel with either a spirit, a liqueur, a modifier of some kind, a juice or whatever on it. It's going to give us a random ingredient. We're going to try and make up a cocktail on the spot as if we were being ordered it at the bar. And it's going to be a collaborative effort. We're going to work together. This isn't a competition, you know. We're going to make a collaborative effort to bring white rum, the core ingredient of today's episode, and whatever this secondary ingredient is, and put them together into a cocktail. And then just for a little bit of extra challenge, once we've done that, roll the wheel again, add another ingredient, either try and find a way to work it into the cocktail we just made, or just mix it with the other two ingredients. Kind of thinking along the lines of if someone came to your bar and said, hey, I want a white rum cocktail. What do you have? And we go, we've got blah, blah, blah. And they go, oh, I also really like X ingredient. Do you have any white rum cocktails with that? And then start throwing stuff together.
Of course.
I will say you came up with a pretty good idea of 86ing really bad things.
Some things you're just never going to get to work together.
Yeah,
like,
I think
unless you're looking for a cement mixer, like lime juice and Bailey's are just never going to go together.
Yeah, no. So if we roll something like that, we're just gonna like if someone came up to the bar and said, "Have you got any cocktails with white rum, Bailey's, and lime juice?" I'm going to say, "No, we don't. Get something else." So generally, there are no. When I said earlier, there are no incorrect recipes. That is an incorrect recipe. Okay, it was meant to be symbolic, not factual. All right. Okay, let's get a wheel rolled on here. Let's see what else we can come up with. I'm gonna go with a modifier, I think, so we can keep white rum as a spirit, and we can get really funky with that. Right. Modifier will include things like juices, bitters, other kinds of flavors of some kind. Right. So let's get a roll on this and hope we can get something actually interesting. And apple juice.
Apple juice. Okay.
Now, rum goes with juice quite a lot in a lot of these tiki cocktails. Pineapple juice with rum all the time. Apple juice I've seen a lot less. Now,
I've only worked at two bars that had apple juice.
Really?
Yeah, it's not a common mixer here.
Ooh, okay.
But I like it.
It's
like
quite
I think
common here. Most bars will at least stock it, even if they don't use it very much here. I will say I would like to say not from concentrate. If it's from concentrate, it's not going to make a good cocktail anyways. You want fresh apple juice, proper juicy apple juice, not the weird kind of
fresh
piss-looking
squeezed
stuff. Like, yeah, of course, yeah. We're going really high end here. I'm going to squeeze the apple in front of you. We've got one of those... a masticator, is that the right word? The big machine that
I reckon
juices it down. Yeah, we'll go with that. Okay, all right. So let's get some thoughts going. So
rum and apple juice. My initial thought is, making some sort of like apple pie. That's very very American is apple pie, right? Having maybe like a brown sugar cinnamon syrup. And controversially, adding a little bit of pineapple juice to offset and kind of give a little bit more flavor and body to the apple juice. And of course, the rum is going to just, go right up in that. But I would probably that's probably what I would think of.
I'm a little conflicted on that just because I love apple juice, right? And I love apple flavored things. And I think apple is the most underutilized flavor in cocktails, period, right? Because I think it's such a good flavor. And I don't mean like the artificial crappy apple that you get from like sweets or syrups or whatever. I mean proper fresh apple. And I get it. It's hard to get that flavor forward. Apple juice, most of the time it is used in a cocktail, is used as a body more than anything, right? It's used for the mouthfeel. It's used for length. My instinct is to kind of try and go against that. So whereas it does work well if you add a little bit more flavor with your pineapple and overpowering stuff, I feel like we can make more from the apple, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Like we can have it as a more, especially with it being such a free working base spirit like white rum. I think there's a lot that we can do to kind of mix those together. You mentioned earlier about like you liking taking a culinary approach to things, right?
Yeah.
Something I did on a menu I put together before, which actually was a recommendation from another bartender friend of mine, was essentially an acid-adjusted apple juice.
Yeah, you were telling me about that, and that sounds
Yes.
great.
So I took fresh apple juice. I give it a little bit more length and body with some mine's blank, some fortified wine, and added some malic acid and tartaric acid. And what it did was it really made the apple flavor like pop out really strong, of like a proper fresh apple flavor. I think that with the white rum, because of that kind of sugar element, could be really, really good. Maybe you do need something to counterbalance it. That's the only bit I'm kind of struggling maybe a little bit to think of. But I do think that if you were to go with it like that, you could get more of that apple flavor through. It's definitely, listen, if someone asks, in my hypothetical where someone comes to the bar and asks me, what can I get with apple juice? I'm doing none of this. Apple juice is the body. I'll get the flavor elsewhere.
Right.
But
of course.
while we have time to think now,
Yeah.
that's my instinct. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of those acid adjusted juices, and and the super juice and those things too. And it does add, an enhanced quality to, your original product. I think there's still something missing for me that, not necessarily cinnamon, but like some other sort of spice that you're making, a spiced syrup to kind of pull all the flavors together and really enhance
cinnamon
the apple
does work.
in some way.
You said about your apple pie kind of vibe,
Yeah,
right? You definitely
cinnamon
could.
brown sugar is one of my favorite like other stock syrups to have, because it just really, both of those, the molasses from the brown sugar and then
for
like
sure.
the spiciness of the cinnamon really pull through a lot of different flavors.
For sure. You could maybe build it out sort of like martini style. Like
Yeah.
I could see like I'd go very much with like a daisy kind of build where you've got like use the acid adjusted apple juice as your citrus, if you would, like in place of the citrus, right? You have your white rum as the base. You have your sugar as a cinnamon, right? Or maybe like a mixture of stuff in there to give those kinds of flavors, right? And then I would have to taste that to know whether it needed the bitters for balancing, but I can definitely see some bitters working in it, right?
Yeah.
Probably just Angostura. I feel like anything else is adding a little bit too much.
Well, and you can even back up with if you were, overwhelmed by how sweet it was with both, like, because the apple juice can be a little sweet, and so is the rum. You could even do like a cinnamon bitter instead.
That's true, actually, yeah.
And that would kind of like, if you're looking for something that's not as, as
I suppose
sweet forward.
You could even add a little bit of sugar into the apple mix.
Yeah, definitely.
And kind of maybe up the numbers on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, do like some cinnamon bitters or cucumber bitters. Cucumber goes pretty well.
I haven't tried
apple.
those, but I think that, cucumber's so refreshing anyways that I wouldn't see why that wouldn't work.
Yeah, I could see that. Going pretty good. Maybe
it definitely should be a drink that's up.
That's, for sure.
Because, the apple juice is going to get diluted really fast by any sort of ice.
Yeah, for sure. I'm thinking sort of like Coupe, maybe Nick and Nora, that kind of vibe. Maybe just like a classic martini glass.
Yeah.
Maybe like, I want to say 60 mil, maybe 50 mil, 60 mil, around there. White rum. 30 mil of your acid adjusted apple juice. 10 mil, maybe 15 mil, like a cinnamon syrup. Maybe 10 mil if you go with like a rich cinnamon syrup. And then some...
Yeah, 10 mils of the rich cinnamon syrup, yeah.
And then some, upon testing, some bitters to taste, right? 1 dash, 2 dashes. Just... I think cucumber would work really well for it. I think when I think about Angostura, it balances well, but flavor-wise, I think cucumber goes pretty good in that. Maybe you
then
give
the
it
most
like
important part. What's
garnish.
The garnish?
It feels so easy to just go with a sugar rim, like a cinnamon sugar rim.
Right.
like a mixture of like a cinnamon powder and brown sugar, right? It's just maybe if you've got more time and you're going creative, you do something based on like your apple pie vibe. I don't know if it's a bit too much to put a pastry on top of it. But,
I've tried doing dehydrated apples, and at least like where I live, it's very humid. So maybe in the winter I could do it, but it ends up being the worst. It
they're
looks great, but it's like the worst texture.
Yeah, I can't imagine that being a very nice texture. Possibly something I did for a drink before, but it was served over ice. I don't know how well you'd be able to make it sit on a martini glass. It was a brulee apples. I put like a bit of brown sugar on an apple slice and bruleed it. I don't know how or
We can get that
where
to
you
float
put
in a
that
coupe, I bet.
on a
You could
coupe.
get it to float in the middle of it, sure.
Just put it in the middle.
Or you could do some
into the drink. I was thinking
send
like
it. Yeah.
with a lot of fruit, you kind of put it on the side of the glass. That's a bit hard to do with a brulee. I also worry a little bit about putting flame near the structural integrity of those tiny little flimsy glasses, but
I like your caution. I never have caution when it's other people's glassware.
Well, in this situation, we're doing this on the bar. Okay, so
all right.
I think my safe bet is a cinnamon sugar rim.
Sure.
But I'd love to experiment with like a brulee apple.
Yeah, I want to bring fire anywhere that I'm at. So.
Or if you're in like a really like high concept bar, you do like a pastry lattice over the top, so it looks like an apple pie.
Sure.
Maybe that's a bit much, but like what that bar that you were sending me pictures of before, where they put like a whole chicken on top of it.
Oh yes,
that's the kind of stuff
they're
they would
all
do.
of their drinks. Yeah, definitely. They would probably garnish it with like a slice of pie because they do several drinks that are garnished with a side of pie.
Or to go really classy, kind of classic cocktail garnish goes well with a pie, maraschino cherry.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, right? It's got a lot of good options. I reckon if I'm doing that in most places, I'm probably cinnamon sugar rim, maraschino cherry. I think a combination of both could be really nice. But if I'm, although I do worry a little bit about the syrup around the maraschino cherry getting in the drink, actually. Ooh.
Yeah, well, my thought was that I wonder about the rim overpowering the drink, like the balance of the drink itself, because you're getting that.
That's
like,
true.
right on your mouth. You're getting that cinnamon that kind of blows out, your taste buds. For
maybe the
else.
cinnamon sugar rim works in the world where instead of doing a cinnamon sugar in the drink, you do the cinnamon bitters.
Yeah.
It's a slightly less sweet drink anyways, right?
Yeah.
You have maybe like a...
You're going to have that simple that's going around the room probably to get that all to stick.
Yeah. Well,
or like a half rim sometimes so that they can enjoy it either way.
Yeah. You could do it with simple, or if you don't want it to be overbearingly sweet considering you're putting sugar on it, in the same way you would with lime juice and salt, you just do it with the apple juice, right? You do it with like the...
Oh, yeah.
The essence of apple juice, dip a little bit of that, and half rim definitely works. But I think the sugar rim works really well with the with if you're using the bitters for the cinnamon flavor. If using the cinnamon sugar in it, you're right, it might be a bit overpowering. So perhaps then you err more towards a maraschino or like a brulee apple of some kind. I think a brulee apple always looks really cool. So if you can make it work, that's definitely... Actually, the good thing with the kind of the solidity of an apple slice is if you make it slightly thick, like if you were to put a lime on the side and you'd cut into a lime wedge through the lime, but it's not... Lime itself isn't very strong, right? If you were to take an apple and kind of, I need you to use your mind's eye here, okay? Same with the listeners, use your mind's eye for a second here. Imagine like an apple wedge, right? Like you've got like a decently thick slice of apple, right? If you put sugar on the top and you brulee it, on the bottom you've got enough space to make a little slit in that, like from the bottom halfway through, and if you then put that onto the side of the glass, it's going to sit across it. Yeah. It's going to be quite heavy.
Yeah.
But
cocktails are art, and so that's
exactly.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any
and
opportunity
they're going to eat it straight away, anyways.
I'm in.
So you know what? Yeah. Maybe I don't have time for all this apple sugar burn in the drink.
Although I think, and maybe maybe you'll agree with this, but like when you put that much effort into a garnish and then it just sits on their napkin, I'm just like,
Mm,
why didn't you eat that?
yeah. I think that's a really comfortably edible garnish, though, right? Like, I feel like, as opposed to some others where they might be a little bit like, oh, I don't know if I like that.
I guess,
Like,
if someone gives me a flower, I'm probably not going to eat that. But like,
yeah, but
I
an
don't know.
apple with sugar on it when they're ordering
Yeah.
an apple cocktail, like,
Yeah.
you know? And it's an easy one to name as well, that, right? I feel like you just call it an apple pie or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Super easy.
You got to get the burn, like the heat element from the Brulé though.
True. Yeah, I really like that. Sounds. I want that now.
I do too.
That sounds really good. Okay, all right. Let's get funky, shall we?
All right.
What
So
category
now we
do you
got
want me
apple
to spin
juice,
to add to
rum, and
this?
then what else?
What category do you want me to spin here? We can have another modifier, so it'll be another juice or bitters or citrus or some kind. I can do a liqueur of some kind. I can do another spirit. I could put spirits and liqueurs together so we don't know.
Let's do a liqueur.
A liqueur, yeah?
I think that could get weird fast.
Okay, all right. Let's spin a liqueur and creme de mure.
Creme de mure.
Creme de mure. So, I think my acid-adjusted apple juice might be a bit much with that. I think they're going to fight with each other too much.
I think so too.
So perhaps this is one where you use apple juice more for the body.
I think that you'd have to. Those are kind of competing flavors, I think.
Yeah. I feel like creme de mure almost demands a place on your palate. And acid adjusting any kind of juice does a similar thing. And if you do that too much, it can be a lot. And I don't know if
there's a lot of
complementing flavors so much. With the sourness of the apple juice and then the tartness of the creme de mure. Okay, so you've got apple juice in there for body or for part of it. The way my brain's going at the moment is a couple of different directions. One of them is a little bit more of a simplistic kind of just long drink where the apple juice makes up a decent chunk of the body. In lieu of kind of a very simplistic, tequila sunrise kind of vibe. The other one is you go quite funky with it, make it kind of like a tiki drink. The apple juice becomes one of the juices that you pull together. The creme de mure becomes a flavor of some kind in it. The problem is with the tiki one, as much as you can get really creative with it, you add too many different juices, you're not getting the flavor of the creme de mure. And at that point, we have to use a creme de mure here. But at that point in development, I'm taking the creme de mure out. It's a pointless flavor. Yeah. But we're talking, we have to use it. A contractual obligation, if you will. This annoying customer at the bar went, actually, I really like creme de mure. I have to have it in my drink. One of those.
Well, I mean, because creme de mure is primarily like blackberry liqueur, right? Like that's the flavor profile.
I believe so.
If I'm remembering correctly.
I don't want to sound stupid by saying yes and it being wrong, but yeah.
No, I mean that. It is okay, cool. So yes. I mean, I've had some ciders that were blackberry apple ciders that were
that's true,
an alcoholic beverage, and those went really nice because keeping a tart more on the tart side of an apple, so maybe like a Granny Smith, than with something that's kind of on the sweeter side of blackberry. Those could go really nicely. And then you have the rum that adds some sugar and doesn't add a ton of flavor profile outside of what it is.
Yeah.
I think that you could put those together and kind of come up with something that's maybe like a longer drink, but just more of kind of using the blackberry as an accent flavor.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's one that, depending on the kind of bar you're in, right? Like, if I'm just making this at home, or I'm in a dive bar or somewhere that's not super high concept.
Right.
This is a really easy one to build out in lieu of like a tequila sunrise, like I said, or like a woo woo or Sex on the Beach kind of vibe, where you literally you do, a 25 ml white rum, 25 ml creme de mure, 100 ml apple juice, roughly.
Yep.
It's a long drink. There you go. You've now got a fruity, alcoholic, relatively low ABV, right? Because you've not got too much of the white rum. Juicy drink. It's super easy to drink. If I'm thinking about something where I'm really like, because that's the kind of drink that's really easy to make and probably quite lovely to drink. It's not a menu drink, right?
No.
If I'm thinking about like a menu drink, or if I'm trying to wow this annoying customer at my bar, then I'm probably not going with something quite on that a simple level, and I probably want to add something else to it or build it out in a way that gives it a bit more complexity.
Well, think about
maybe a bit more of a cool vibe.
Maybe if you did it as like an up cocktail and used the creme de mure as a sinker, right?
That's true.
Because that might give you some visual.
To be fair, creme de mure is also a really good float, visual. Right?
Oh, I mean, yeah, you could do either way. Not necessarily, wouldn't have to necessarily be a sinker, but like having some sort of like, layered element to it, so that from a visual component, to maybe have those flavors a little bit separated and not mixed in.
Yeah,
that might elevate it a little bit.
I think there's potentially, the way I'm thinking about the creme de mure, even if you were to use it as a float or if you were to use it as a modifier, I feel like to allow that sweet and tart flavor of the creme de mure to come through without it being super simplistic, I feel like maybe it's a drink that you give a split base to. I feel like a split base lends itself really well to making something exotic out of something simple. My mind actually quite quickly, I think maybe because I'm still a little bit on the fog cutter vibe where there's a lot of strangeness to it with the juices, right? But my mind went quite quickly to pisco.
Okay.
As obviously quite a light, a brandy product. It's got a fantastic flavor profile, but again, one that is similar to the rum in that it's quite a light one, as opposed to taking like a spiced or a dark rum. You go with the white rum. It's the same with the pisco compared to like a brandy, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like what that would do is give a really, really cool, like kind of tropical vibe to it, without putting in loads of trying to word it correctly. The kind of flavor profile that the creme de mure brings, and the parts of the overall, flavor soup that the creme de mure takes place in.
Great word.
I feel like, thank you. I feel like having white rum and pisco, neither of them take up the same space in it. The problem with the acid adjusted apple juice was it took up the same spot almost. As a creme de mure.
Definitely.
I feel like a pisco, as opposed to maybe some other spirits, wouldn't. Right. The reason I was reluctant with the creme de mure in a lot of tiki drinks is because you put it with, a different kind of aged brandy, like a cognac of some kind, right? Or you put it with a spiced rum, or you put it with something darker. They're taking up too much of the same space, and they're going to clash.
Yeah.
I don't think a pisco would, and I think it could sit really, really
I tend
nicely.
to agree with you that it's a light flavor that would not necessarily wouldn't be overcome by creme de mure.
I think maybe, I know the white rum was the core of it. If you were to go with that kind of split base, maybe you could build it out kind of like a sour. I know that's very different to what I've thought of so far, but like if you were to put that with some of the apple juice, maybe a little bit of citrus.
I think a little bit of lemon juice would be a good
a little bit of lemon juice.
Out.
And then like some egg white or aquafaba or foamer of some kind.
Oh, definitely egg white. Yes,
right?
yes.
Give it a good hard shake over some crushed ice. Float some creme de mure.
Yep, into it.
Like
definitely, yeah. I like having the creme de mure as a float.
And a float like that on a sour, I think, would be unreal.
Yes.
Yeah. The apple juice gets a little bit lost in that, is my only worry. But although because of how much is in it, I was reluctant to add sugar, even though it's a sour. What if you reduce down the apple juice a little?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You could do that.
Like add a bit of sugar to it, make it kind of closer to an apple syrup. I know that's technically cheating because it's no longer apple juice, but like you're taking that apple juice and adjusting it in a way that really makes it sit in the
I don't
it
think
really
that's
makes
cheating.
it
I
work
think
in a
that's
cool, like,
using your resources.
sort of, it feels very like sit at the beach under a palm tree kind of drink. All of the ingredients give me that vibe at that point.
Yeah.
And it's just like a cool, like, funky tropical sour.
Yeah. I think that, using that as a reduction, adding some egg white in there to give it a little bit of smoothness on your palate, and then having that creme de mure as a float, so you're able to taste all of the different elements of it instead of having it just
a lot
blackberry.
coming through it. Yeah. And especially if you've reduced and sweetened the apple juice, you're going to get that apple flavor in a really sweet way.
Yeah, definitely.
But again, because apple juice, until you adjust it, is a pretty soft flavor in itself, it's not going to overpower those other flavors that are in it. It's not going to take away from the creme de mure. It's not going to overpower the pisco and the rum coming through.
No.
It does feel maybe a little bit blasphemous going with lemon juice with rum, but with white rum it always works. It works better with pisco, in my opinion, and it works really well with like your blackberry and your apple juice as well.
Yeah, and I know that traditionally with rum you'd use lime, but I think in this case the other flavors would all, like you said, benefit from lemon juice just a little bit more.
Well, then again, the vodka uses lemon, so the cocktail I brought used lemon. I already started the blasphemy long ago. I may as well continue. If I'm going to hell, I'm going to do so with a sour in my hand.
Right, yeah. I will see you in bartending hell. I'm here for it.
Bartending hell is you going down there, showing them the sour, and they go, "Oh, can I just get a mojito?" That's bartending hell.
Yeah. Yeah. And your printer is going off in the background continuously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Numbers wise, then I'd say maybe split base even, 25 ml of each.
Yeah, single measure so. Here. You probably wouldn't.
Or 30 ml if you're going with a slightly bigger one. 25 ml of each. You go probably 15 ml lemon juice, 10 to 15. Or do you want more?
The apple reduction?
Or with a sour, maybe you want more lemon juice. Maybe 25 lemon.
I think, for a sour, I'd want more lemon juice.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So 25 of each spirit, 25 lemon juice, 15 apple reduction.
Yep. And about, what is it?
Like an
25
egg white,
of
or like
egg white, yeah.
Or like 10 to 15 ml aquafiber or whatever. Not a drink that currently has bitters in it, but I feel like it benefits from that actually here. I feel like the bitters might make it a bit too much. They could definitely work. I'm not taking away from your
I think that
beauty.
No, I think for this case, because with the float, sometimes the the bitters, when you already have a float, they kind of compete.
Yeah.
And don't mix in very well. So I think in this case I would probably leave them off.
Yeah, some bitters. Maybe a blackberry on the side, just as a garnish. Okay. They're super seasonal here, so we get them all the time. Little blackberry on the side. No. That sounds.
I like a frozen blackberry sometimes as a internal garnish because it will keep the drink cold without adding any dilution to it.
That's true. And structurally, blackberries are horrible to work with because they just
they
just fall apart. So yeah, that's true.
And then you have blackberry
frozen or freeze
hands.
dried or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be pretty good, and it'd sit nicely on the egg white foam as well.
Definitely.
Rocks glass crushed ice sorted. Lovely. All right, so we came up with two actually quite wildly different cocktails despite only putting one ingredient in.
Yeah, definitely.
But we came up with the apple pie, if you will, with the kind of straight up martini style acid adjusted apple drink, and then the we didn't did we give it a name?
I don't think we gave it a name.
It's got to be something sour, right? It's got too many ingredients in it to just go as one of those. Maybe like a. I'm trying to think of the flavors. Is there like a? They feel like almost tropical, but not quite. Like they're all quite soft, quite fresh, quite crisp. Crisp sour makes me. Might work better for you over there than it does here. Crisp sour here, I'm thinking there's like crisps in it, or chips. which is maybe a little bit too high concept.
Yeah.
Why is the name on this one so difficult? Like a palm sour, perhaps, because it's like being under the palm trees.
Sure.
Palm. We'll go with that. It's a questionable name. It's a fantastic sounding cocktail. It's a questionable name.
Naming is the hardest part.
Yeah, it's fine. A palm sour will do. We have the palm sour with the reduced apple sweetener, the rum, the pisco, split base, and lemon, and the creme de mule float. That sounds actually wonderful. I think drinking
It does.
a couple of those, sat out in a beer garden or on a beach, just sat on a beach on a reclined in the sun, drinking both of those at the same time. I think that's bartender heaven.
Amazing.
Actually.
Yeah, it does.
But
that
I'm dreaming
great.
a little
It
bit too
great.
much. I'm a little bit too broke for that as well, so I'll stick with my bottled beer. Right, well that's kind of all we have time for today.
That's great.
Thank you for joining me on this adventure through cocktail flavors and stuff. I had a lot of fun making this stuff up with you.
Yeah, I definitely had a great time, and I look forward to next time when we'll have a new spirit or item of choice.
Yeah, I'm excited I think at least for the first few we stick with spirits to really, kind of.
Yeah, I think that's we'll eventually run out of spirits and we'll just
really
have to
funky.
get weird stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes up next week, and obviously at some point in the future, hopefully we can get some guests in, see if they can help us come up with some cool cocktails, come with some cool stories themselves. But we don't have anyone specific planned right now. So if you listen to this and you're a bartender and you want to come on, please let us know. That's completely fine. Please, we need friends, please. But yeah, I'm excited to speak next week. So thank you for listening or watching on whatever platform you did. Make sure you like this on Spotify because it will really help us out. Like this on YouTube, leave a comment, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, all of that. Generic stuff. Leave a comment on what your favourite cocktail was from the episode, whether it was one of the classics or one of our weird, funky creations. We'll put the recipes for these in the descriptions and stuff. And also let us know if you try out any of the cool, weird creations we've come up with, because we came up with these on the spot. We haven't actually tried these, so I'd actually love to know if these work. But yeah, thank you for listening and stuff. See you next time. Bye.
Good night, y'all.